Today, we're diving into a really fascinating blueprint for building communities, one that completely flips the script on how we think about work, wages, and ownership.
So, let's just start with the big question that's at the heart of this whole thing. What if every hour you put in didn't just earn you a paycheck, but it also earned you a literal piece of the world around you? Your home, the farm that grows your food, the workshop you use. What if you owned it? This quote really nails the core idea. It's a huge mindset shift, right? It's not about buying the product anymore. It's about owning the thing that makes the product. So instead of just buying an apple, you co-own the entire orchard. The fruit is already yours from the very beginning.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the big promise: work to own your world. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the building blocks of the system. We'll explore what an economy of users actually looks like, see how the community can grow, and finally, touch on a really interesting crypto funding idea. All right, first up, let's talk about the fundamental goal here. What is this whole model trying to achieve?
The main objective is to build what are called regenerative communities, basically places that are self-sustaining and actually improve their local environment. But the key part is that your work directly earns you ownership in real-world assets. And we're not talking about abstract shares here. We're talking about the legal deed to the land, the title to the buildings. The ultimate goal is to get rid of things like rent and internal markups because you and your community own your own supply chains from start to finish.
So you're probably wondering, how does this actually work on a day-to-day basis? Well, it all boils down to three really important legal tools that make the whole engine run: tickets, contracts, and deeds.
First, you've got the ticket. The easiest way to think about this is like a formal IOU from the community to you. It's a real, legally binding claim for something you'll need in the future, say a loaf of bread or an hour of plumbing work. This is how the community knows what it actually needs to produce. It's all based on real demand.
Okay, next up is the contract. So for every single ticket, you have a series of contracts that break down all the work that needs to get done. If that ticket is for a loaf of bread, you'll have contracts for growing the wheat, for milling it, and for baking the loaf. When you sign a contract, you're making a commitment to do your part of the work.
And finally, we get to the deed. This is the payoff. This is the real game changer. When you finish the work on your contract, you don't just get paid with more tickets for other stuff. No, you earn a deed, a legally binding title that gives you real, fractional ownership of the land and the equipment you were just using. So when you put all three of these together, you get this really simple but powerful cycle. It starts with a need, which is identified with a ticket, then work gets committed to through a contract, and finally, that work gets rewarded with real ownership through a deed. Your labor is literally being converted directly into equity.
So let's zoom out a little bit. What kind of economy does this create? Because this isn't just a small tweak on what we have now. It's a totally fundamental shift in who owns what. This comparison really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got a more traditional model, even a worker-owned co-op. The farmer owns the farm, the miller owns the mill, and they sell to each other, adding a profit margin at each step. But now look at the right side, the user ownership model. The person who wants the bread already co-owns the whole chain: the farm, the mill, and the bakery. The wheat and flour are never sold internally, which means that internal profit is just gone. It's completely eliminated. Okay, so that immediately brings up a huge question, right? If you get rid of internal profit, how in the world does a community like this grow? How does it ever buy more land or bring on new people? The answer is actually pretty straightforward. You produce a surplus. You make more than the community needs, and you sell that extra stuff on the open external market. And that profit is then very strategically plowed right back into the community. It's used to pay off any initial investors, to pay outside taxes. It's also used to buy things the community can't make yet. And most importantly, it's used to buy more land to expand and grow, all without taking on new debt. Now let's get into a really modern part of the model, a proposed and totally optional way to crowdfund the money needed for that initial land purchase, using a specially designed cryptocurrency. So the system outlines a crypto coin that has a fixed or hard-capped supply of 510 trillion. Now, that number sounds absolutely massive and kind of random, but it's not. It's conceptually tied to the approximate number of square meters on the entire surface of planet Earth. But here's the really crucial difference between this coin and something you might be more familiar with, like Bitcoin. It's how they're created. With Bitcoin, new coins are mined by powerful computers. Here, that's not how it works at all. New coins are only ever issued and sold for one reason: when the community is raising funds to buy a specific piece of land. The money from the sale goes directly to that land purchase.
And this is maybe the single most important thing to understand about this part of the model. Buying the coin does not make you a landowner. It doesn't give you any voting rights or any say in how things are run, and you have zero claim on any profits. The coin is purely and simply a fundraising tool. That's it. It's a way to get capital to the community so it can buy the land that its members will then go on to own through their work.
So at the end of the day, this entire model, all of it, from the legal framework of tickets, contracts, and deeds to this optional crypto funding idea, it's all a complex and, frankly, visionary attempt to answer one profound question. It's asking us to imagine if we could build our future communities not on a foundation of debt, but on a foundation of direct earned ownership. And that right there is a really powerful idea to chew on.